You're watching the Vet Tunes Podcast, the show that shines a spotlight on military and veteran artists. Stand by for transmission. All right, transmission indeed. We are transmitting to you from the Jump CP at Harmony Hill. When we do our virtual interviews and podcasts, we do it through the Jump CP, which is really the name for the office in my house. And then when we do the in-person ones, we do that down at the studio. But today, due to time, space, and logistics, we get to talk to Stephanie Simon, who I came across on the interwebs. And just, when you look at her feed, she's like the most interesting person in the world, because she is a Marine officer, and she's a professional boxer, and get this, and the reason we're here, she's a musician, which is really cool. So I was following her, and then all of a sudden I started seeing some guitar work and some songs that you were singing, and I was like, no, you have to have her on, because that's exactly what we're doing here. Welcome to the Vet Tunes Podcast. It's an absolute honor to have you, and I can't wait to dive into all this stuff to see how your crazy world just operates.
Thank you, and I'm excited to get going. I've never been on a music-related podcast, so this will be a first. Usually it's boxing stuff or military stuff, but not really military boxing together, or military/music. So it'll be, I think, a unique experience, and I'm excited.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, so, the reason we started this is I got to know a lot of amazing singer-songwriters and musicians and people all over the world who were veterans, and I thought it would be cool to tell their stories. So it's the music tie-in that brings you here today, but we got to unpack all this stuff.
For sure.
So really what we like to do is we like to get people's journey to the military, and then their journey to music, and then perhaps how they might coincide sometimes. So tell us a little bit about you and your background and what brought you to the Marine Corps.
For sure. So my dad was in the Marine Corps for about 24 years. He always gets mad when I say 23, but he was a Marine officer, and at a young age, I don't really remember this, but I have pictures of being at his retirement ceremony in Lejeune, and I'm like standing up looking at him, and I'm like 4 years old. And so I guess that's really how young I was when I first got exposed to the military or the Marine Corps.
What year was that?
That was 1998. So that was a while ago, but as time went on, I think by the time I was 11, my dad really started freaking telling me over and over again about the Naval Academy and the military, and he never really thought the Marine Corps would be a good fit for me, but he did think the Naval Academy would be, and he thought in his eyes that I would be a great Navy pilot. Neither here nor there. I didn't really have an interest in that, but that's kind of where I started getting that idea of the military college. While this is all happening, it's kind of in the back of my mind, because really my main focus is, at this time, 11 years old, it's really athletics and music. And I was having a conversation with my mom the other day, and I asked her why I was so obsessed with that movie about Ray Charles. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Ray with Jamie Foxx.
Oh yeah. I've seen it many times, and I see that poster, or I see that wall art behind you.
Right, we got Ray Charles right there. So she said that she's like, you watched that movie and you became obsessed with the piano, you became obsessed with music, you became obsessed with him. And sometimes when you're young, you forget these little details, but I look back and I realized that I was 8 at the time, and that's when I really started getting obsessed with playing the piano and learning harmonies and learning music. And my mom is actually a very musically inclined person herself. She took voice lessons and opera lessons for many years and has a beautiful voice. And my dad, he can play piano completely by ear. So he's taught himself any song by ear on the piano that you would hear on the radio, and then he would teach me, and I picked that up through him. So I have the ability to hear music by ear and play it on the piano pretty well. That's kind of where it started. It was a combination of being obsessed with Ray Charles as a child, and then having two very musically inclined parents. So by the time I was in 5th grade, I decided I wanted to join band. And so I started playing the trumpet. And at this time I'm taking piano lessons, but I didn't like how structured it was. I felt like there's too many rules. And so the teacher would give me an assignment. She would give me a song I need to learn. And what I would do is I'd figure out how to play it by ear and not actually learn the techniques or the notes. And by the time it came to the recital, I would just BS it like I knew the song and like I was reading it. But really, it was all just me figuring it out and like tweaking certain parts of the song. And I remember, I think I was 10 or 11. I asked her if I could do my own arrangement of Georgia on My Mind. And she said, screw it. Fine, you can do it, I guess. So I like taught myself Georgia on My Mind, like a jazzy version. And she helped me through it. But like none of what I performed in that recital was like a written sheet music with notes. It was just a song I figured out in my own mind. So and that was really like the beginning of it all. And I ended up being like very heavily involved in band. And by the time I was in ninth grade, I actually marched in the inaugural parade when President Obama was elected. And that was one of like the coolest experiences of my life. And I never let go of that side of me, the music side. I continued to do a billion sports. I was on the wrestling team. I was an All-American wrestler. I was breaking school records in track and field and doing well academically, but I never let go of the music interest or the involvement in the arts in that sense. Most kids that were really heavily involved in sports, they quit around 7th, 8th grade before high school, and I just continued to do it. I was also in jazz band, I was in the marching band, I was in the concert band, I was in all the bands, and I had a lot of issues with my band teachers because they wanted all the musicians and all the kids in band to be just like fully focused on band and nothing else. And you know how musicians can be, like they're type A in a way that in some ways is more intense than athletic coaches, and people don't know that unless they've been around like music teachers. They can be very, very intense. And so I had my few experiences being embarrassed in front of the whole marching band, which we had like 400 people in it. But nonetheless, I stuck with it and then went to the Naval Academy. And at the Naval Academy, I heard about this thing called Glee Club. And I never really watched the show, but I heard about Glee Club being really cool. I'd never really been a singer, but I knew that I could the tune, read music, sight read. I tried out for it and made it no problem. And I ended up doing Glee Club all 4 years at the Naval Academy, along with the boxing team, and I was on the track team. And within the Glee Club, I was in a small group called the Riveters, which was like a small a cappella group. And we sang all sorts of, cool songs from, any hits that you would hear on the radio or a lot of songs from Pitch Perfect, which I'm sure you've seen that movie. So yeah, today I kind of play for fun still. I got my trumpet right here. I got my microphone there and my guitar. And I've started to think about and consider getting more into writing and actually, face my fear. I think I have a fear of sucking at it, which I know I will, but I think I need to like suck it up and start getting into it more. That's where I'm at.
I've been sucking at it for like 3 decades, but that Marine persistence, just makes you keep driving on.
I'm sure you don't, not with what I've seen and heard, but that's kind of where the music goes and where it is now is kind of in this weird place with it,
I think something not a lot of people may know is that there are active duty bands at the Academy, right? I know there's one at West Point there, and that's one of the Army field bands, and the same with the Naval Academy. So to be able to still go out and do some music stuff through the different clubs, like I believe up at West Point, there's still like a student band that kind of augments that Army band up there for like football games and things like that. Is that the same way at the Naval Academy as well?
It is. We do have like a marching band, and we have separate bands too that just do like more small group type performances. Like sometimes we'll set up at lunch or dinner, and it'll be like not the full band, just a few people together that are midshipmen, and they would do like really good performances. So when I was there, we had all sorts of opportunities for musicians. We had the gospel choir, the men's glee club, women's glee club, obviously the actual band, which they were all Navy.
There's definitely a lot of people that are interested in music that are in the military, and we love hearing stories on different ways that they have
for sure
been able to pursue that path.
Absolutely. And it's just surprisingly enough, I don't know if it's a surprise, but there are just a lot of service members that have gifts and talents that you just would never imagine. And I think it's important to, as an officer, to shine a light on those talents and gifts, even if they're not military related, because I think that being able to get someone excited about sharing their gift and seeing their face lit up and being the one to empower that, I think like it's a magical thing. And I think back to the short deployment I was on to Iceland and the UK. We're on ship, and I went to the mess decks and actually brought my guitar, my microphone, and an amp with me on this exercise, because one of my best friends who was also on this ship, and she was on the Navy side though, she asked me if I would do a musical performance at her sister's wedding with her, and if, I'd be interested in creating like this performance with her where we mashed up a bunch of songs and put our own funny lyrics. So I said yes. So I brought my instruments mainly to rehearse and practice with her on the ship. And one night I decided, let me like bring out the instruments, the microphone, and let me do a little performance for the Marines and sailors. And I actually got to really bond with a lot of them through that musical performance, because I was playing for them and just like being vulnerable and singing in front of them and playing the guitar and kind of like having a good time, but showing them that I can express myself in an artistic way and it's still professional. It's a unique way of bringing people together, and to this day, I still talk to some of the sailors that were on that ship. One of them had like an incredible voice, and him and I were friends on Instagram. He actually went to one of my professional fights here in Long Beach, and I literally met him through that and bonding through music. So yeah, music is a powerful thing. It's the one thing that can give anybody goosebumps regardless of what language you speak or where you're from in the world. And it can also bring people together and make people smile. That's why I'm drawn to it, and that's kind of my plug-in and how I used it in the military, at least as an active duty officer.
Yeah. No, as music is the great communicator, and then I think in the situation where you have a Marine officer, or an officer, or staff NCO, or anything like that, anybody in a leadership position, when you sit in front of somebody and play, I think it makes you a little bit more approachable, because they see you as a little bit more human than just the machine. So I know there was many occasions I was on a ship as well, and became the singing lieutenant. Did the talent contest, and then I actually had a CD that came out as I was deployed. My folks had mailed some of those to me, so a month later when we finally got mail call, they wound up playing it over the 1MC and that kind of thing.
So cool.
I have fun memories of being on a Navy ship with a bunch of Marines and sailors, and everybody just enjoying music.
That is so cool. Wow. Yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, that's amazing. You had your own music and CDs and stuff while you're active duty. So I know that takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of commitment to be able to write music because you were infantry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
no, I was a young little platoon commander, and we went all around. We did this thing called Unitas.
Unitas, you still have
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So basically we would go, it was a 6-month workup, 6-month deployment, composite unit. We would work up and then go to South America. So we went all around South America. We left out of North Carolina, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Panama, through the Panama Canal, all around, and then the west coast of South America. Then we came up to Argentina, then Rio, and then we shot across to West Africa. And I had a guitar in tow as well, and wound up going into a couple different clubs as we were making some of those stops. And I couldn't speak the language with the majority of the musicians, but when you just kick a blues song in the key of E or whatever, it's the universal language.
100%. That's so cool.
Yeah,
wow. Wow. I can't imagine. I'd be scared.
Well, it's just fun, and then I had some moments in Fallujah, and then when I got back and was working at the Wounded Warrior Regiment, just some of the times when music just became such a powerful tool to communicate and express, and it was just such a powerful thing, and that's kind of what led us here is, we to be able to share those stories with other military and veterans and musicians that are out there doing it.
And another thing I would like to bring up is that I think you mentioned it earlier about healthy outlets. I think music is like an incredibly healthy outlet that I wish more people would tap into, because I think, especially in the military, it's easy to make bad things your outlet, things that aren't good for you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you saw that plenty. I know I saw it, still see it today. at all levels, all ranks, at every unit I've ever been in. I've seen the not so healthy outlets kind of take over people's life. Yeah, I understand that some people's outlet is playing video games or working out, but there is definitely something special in being present and creating something. Even if it's a cover, you're like working through the the struggles and the challenges of finding the right notes. It like brings you into a mental state where you're unaware of time, you're unaware of your problems if you have them, you're not even thinking about anything other than finding the right note and putting it together. And like, I try my best to do this every week. I used to do it every day, but as a boxer, I need the outlet, and music is my outlet. And I hope one day when I stop boxing that music can be more than just the outlet. And I think right now for me personally, as a pro fighter, I really do got to focus on that. But a little bit of validation for me is that, and again, I say this just because I'm proud of myself, is I've had some moments where I'm playing my instrument on my Instagram story, and like I've gotten like a thumbs up from Sean Stockman from Boys to Men. And I know that someone of his caliber and talent wouldn't respond to someone that sucked. So I know I don't suck. So I know I have something. You know, I actually work with in boxing at one of the gyms I work at. One of the chicks, formerly known as Dixie Chicks, she has an amazing son who has become a great friend of mine. He makes music himself. He's grown up in music his whole life. He tours with his mom, and he is kind of told me, like, you have the production ability, you have the talent for it, you have the ear for it. I've watched what you've shared. You just got to do it. And so I got this MacBook. I finally switched to Mac because I know it's easier to make music on MacBooks. I've taken the first steps. I have the recording software, but now I got to figure out how to muster up the courage. And I've started ideas, and I've created them, and I've done my audio little notes whenever I come up with them. And I know there's all sorts of different philosophies on how to create and write music, but I know that music is in my future. I just don't know exactly how. One of my cousins who lives out here in LA, he handed me a voice memo a few months ago, probably a year ago almost now. And in a voice memo, he just sang the melody. I got questions, I got answers that I never know. Da 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 da. Right? He just talked and sang through the melody, and he's like, I'm trying to come up with an idea. And I played it, then I went to the piano and I put chords with it, and then it ended up being an actual recorded song that we kind of made together. And it's a beautiful song, still waiting on it to get released, but definitely gonna share it with you once it comes out. But
please do.
I've started to dip my toes into the songwriting world more. And, you know, both my brothers write music too. I didn't mention that, but both my brothers are musicians who write music. And if they can do it, I can do it. I just have to, like I said, not be so afraid of sucking at it, you know?
No, I mean, I would think that, you know, based on what I've seen, you have an amazing vocal quality and a rhythm too. And I think,
Thank you.
You know, part of that rhythm is that life cadence, I think. And I think you probably have some of that through
boxing,
you know, or maybe,
yeah.
You know, maybe they've somehow supported each other mutually at some point. But, you know, you did a song and it had such a quick vocal and this cadence to it. And, you know, and then I see you're doing some shadow boxing and fight prep, and it's just like it, you know, to me, it all makes sense. It may seem a little strange, but, you know, I think it's awesome. And that's why we had to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you. No, and actually, I think you've seen the clip where I went to my mom's class and I talked to them about music and boxing and how they're related and rhythm. I think the greatest fighters of all time have had the ability to create a rhythm, but also break the rhythm of the opponent or catch onto the rhythm. You know, it's like an accent. If like, this is the rhythm, like, you know what I mean? The and of two. So if someone's punching at you, let's say it's quarter notes, you want to throw a punch in between their rhythm. And it's so musically tied in. It's hard to explain, but like music and fighting, they are very oddly intertwined, and they go together. More so boxing, I think, because boxing, I know people talk about MMA. MMA has a lot more grappling, and there's also a lot more time in between exchanges and punches and less of a emphasis on rhythm. But in boxing, you got this hand. You don't got any takedowns. this is it. So you have to have a rhythm, and you have to be able to catch someone else's rhythm and punch in between their rhythm. And like I said, the parallels are so cool, and I'm looking forward to kind of talking about the parallels in like a public speaking kind of like way, hopefully. And I'm trying to figure that out too, but I got asked from someone to actually do that for a nonprofit organization that helps youth and through music, and like it's all starting to come together, and I'm looking forward to it. I just gotta let God be the one in charge and kind of get to that destination in the most natural way. But there's so much to be shared, and I think that as a songwriter like yourself, as a musician, it's a beautiful thing to be able to share that gift in whatever unique way that you can.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so before we get to the boxing career, let's talk a little bit about the military career. So you went to the Naval Academy, and then you chose the Marine Corps, or how does that process work where you get to
Right.
pick which service you want to join?
So going into sophomore year, every midshipman has to do like a ship cruise type thing. So you go on a ship for like a month's training. You're not out at sea the whole time. Sometimes you are, which that's brutal for someone that's like, 19 years old and like never experienced the
Like a
ship life.
Tiger cruise?
Right. No, like the kind of cruise where, you're not partying, you're like painting the side of the ship type stuff. Which I'm sure in the Citadel you guys did cruises too, right? Did you guys ever do any type of naval training or?
Maybe the Navy guys did.
Okay.
I don't
It's a
know.
little different.
We just kind of, we had a bunch of drill instructors and MECEPs there, and anytime they had the opportunity, either before class or on the weekends or whenever we went and did field exercises, it was just it was how much suck can you take?
Right. Brilliant. No, I've heard the Citadel is
Gotta
tough.
embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. The best words for young midshipmen, or are they cadets at Citadel?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I think just kind of having that shared suffering helped with OCS, and then
For
the
sure.
basic school, and then the infantry officer course, which is like getting a master's and embracing the suck. But it's, it's a good time.
Yeah, I still don't know. I got mad respect for anyone who completes and gets through IOC, because as soon as someone told me that the first thing that happens is the OEOEO, again, I might be wrong, but the O course, E course, O course, course, back and forth, that's like the first thing you do, like off the jump. I heard about that. I said, good luck. No, thank you. I want nothing to do with that, and then getting all the crazy ground fighting. I heard, again, they might be rumors, myths. I know you probably can't say, but I heard about being in a classroom, chilling, everything's cool, you're learning, and then everyone moves the tables and the chairs to the side and they do some kind of grappling or something. I don't know. Regardless, I've heard some crazy stories, and I got mad respect for anyone that got through that school, because I know it's very challenging.
Yeah. No, we used to have this thing called the line program, and we would just go out. We wouldn't do it during class, but every morning we would just go and, just battle each other and have the grappling fights and all that kind of stuff, and kind of work in that martial arts type stuff. This is,
Right.
pre McMap and all that stuff. But,
Sure, yeah, the ship.
yeah.
And I decided at that point, I was like, I'm not really cut out for the Navy life. The ironic thing is I ended up becoming an AAV officer, amphibious assault officer, which puts you on a ship a lot. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But after that month around, the ships and the Navy people, which the Navy people are awesome. I love sailors. I think they're a good time. But I felt like there was a little lack of like physical toughness and just a little bit different mindset from what I kind of aligned with. Like, I was a very physically motivated person. Like, I wanted to embrace the suck, like you talk about. I loved pushing my physical limits. With the boxing team, I started boxing at the Naval Academy as a freshman because it was actually required for everyone to do boxing and wrestling. The wrestling was fine, no problem. I grew up wrestling, but the boxing was like, ooh, this is new, this is different. Kind of found it by accident and ended up doing it as a sport. Fell in love with it, but the more I was around the boxing people, the funny thing is the majority of the team, senior year, I noticed they would either get selected as Navy SEALs or EOD officers, or they went in the Marine Corps route. That was like I'm talking 95% of the time, those were the 3 like routes people from the boxing team would go. And so as I found myself around more Marines and more Marine selects, I think by the time I started sophomore year is when I decided, okay, when I put in my preferences senior year, I'm going to put Marines at the top. At the Naval Academy, only 25% go Marine Corps, and it's not guaranteed. So just because you put Marine Corps number 1 doesn't mean you're going to get it.
Right.
But if you have good physical fitness tests or test scores and you don't have any like honor offenses, you haven't been in like serious trouble, which over there, looking back, serious trouble is kind of funny. Like you can get in trouble for parking in the wrong spot, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Citadel, I'm sure is the same. Like, oh, you didn't shine your shoes the right way, you're getting written up. So, but you know what I mean? So like something serious where you lied, you cheated or stole something. If you didn't do that, and you had good physical fitness scores and, you had that aura about you that like, I want to go kick ass, then you're pretty much going to get selected for it. So, at this time, around 2016, 2017, I commissioned from the Academy 2017. The Marine Corps just opened up combat arms to women. So before that, women were not allowed to be in AAVs, infantry, tanks. And so I realized that, and I think before I even started my Marine Corps career, I had a feeling that I would either go like the public affairs route or I would go the combat arms route. And I say public affairs because I've always been a social butterfly and I like to talk and I like to hang out with people and I love to perform. But I think that looking back, I realized that in all honesty, I have a little bit of lack of tact and I guess the ability to, I don't know, think maybe a couple times before I say something. Not the best at that. And that's just self-reflective,
Yeah.
I think as a fighter, we have a chip on our shoulder, and that's a good thing, but it can also be a double-edged sword. So that chip on my shoulder kind of like, this is dumb type mentality, which can be a good thing, like calling a spade and being real. I think that quality needed to be polished and worked on before going into something like public affairs, So maybe now, I don't know if I would be cut out for it. Not sure, but I think that was something that kind of prevented me from really diving into that, as I felt kind of like, I'm not good at the fake smile and kissing babies. And I'm not saying that all public affairs and comstrat people do that, but there is definitely a need for that, a need for that type of behavior when you are in that type of MOS. So I thought about it more and I got to TBS and, my preparation for TBS, I hazed myself. I look back, I remember at one point I was able to run 3 miles with 20 to 30 pounds in 21 minutes. So when I tell you that I pushed myself to a level that like I can't even describe, I was doing bear crawls with weighted vests after school. I was doing things that were like not David Goggins level, but Danielle Goggins level.
Nice.
I'm just kidding. But I was so motivated. I was like, ain't no one going to beat me at anything. I'm going to be the freaking best. I'm going to hike every day. And I trained so hard that when I got there, the physical stuff was a breeze. The hikes were the hardest part. The hiking, because I'm not super tall, 5'6", 5'7", but I maxed the O course, I maxed the E course, I maxed every physical fitness. I got the Iron Jane Award, whatever the heck it's called, for getting 100 on everything. But what I struggled with the most was like learning and applying the tactical lessons into the orders process and into like executing it. You know how it is at TBS. I had a hard time with that because I didn't quite grasp why decisions were made on the battle space. I don't know why. I look back today, I'm like, why would you do it that way? How does everybody know that that's the way you're supposed to do it? It didn't really click very well with me. And despite that, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to go the AAV route. I get it. I'm not the most tactically smart person, but I feel like with the physical abilities and the ability to learn how to get better at tactics and writing orders, that's something that I can improve on. The physical stuff, I've shown that I'm very good at that. that's going to be important, especially when I'm going to have a platoon of like 60 guys. I got to show that I'm going to be fit enough to lead from the front. So picked AAVs, and actually due to the academics, like I did not finish at the top or the middle of my class. I struggled with the tests. I struggled with, like I said, I struggled with things, not physically, but I struggled a lot with the quizzes, the academics, and it's just the information didn't come naturally to me. But I would say by the grace of God, I still got my number one pick for the MOS. And at that point, I was the only female officer on the East Coast. And I was one of one over there. We had a girl named Lieutenant Clinky at the time. She was the first female AAV officer. She was on the East Coast. So they basically told me, okay, you got AAVs, but we already got one lady on the West Coast. We need female types on the East Coast. We got to balance you guys out. And from there, I think...
So is that out to Courthouse Bay?
Good old Courthouse Bay. I remember the first day. This is the most AAV thing, real quick. The most AAV thing ever is I have my little drink, and I'm looking around. I notice everyone's dipping, you know, because that's what combat arms Marines do. They chew tobacco. And I'm drinking my little drink, cool. And I don't realize that my bottle and the dip spit bottle that someone had looked very similar. So I opened the dip spit bottle and drank someone's dip spit on accident. And I didn't want anyone to see that I freaked out. So I freaked out internally. And that was like my welcome to tracks moment. Like, it's like drinking dip spit. So definitely good moments and good times. That's kind of how I ended up in tracks. Fast forward, did that 2 years. In between, I did some work with MCT. I did a little bit of work with G4. And then the last 2 years of active duty, I was on the Marine boxing team, which was a blast. I got to be the captain of the team and got onto Team USA, won multiple national titles, was inducted to the Marine Corps Hall of Fame. And so that was my active duty experience in a nutshell.
Yeah. So real quick, back to the public affairs folks. That is a unique skill set. And I never really appreciated it until I was at the Wounded Warrior Regiment and I was the XO. I'm a lieutenant colonel up there. Your CO was out traveling all the different units. You're out there. You're briefing the commandant. You're taking calls from the ACMAC. Pretty high vis, right? Well, when something happens at one of the hospitals or, a high visibility patient or something like that, boy, I was sure glad we had a super professional public affairs officer that just, just handled all that stuff. Captain Jill Wolf, man, she was awesome and really taught me what it to be public affairs, and getting out ahead of stuff or, being able to effectively communicate. Whereas I, with my little grunt brain, would have just probably thrown out a bunch of profanity and be like,
Exactly.
So they are absolutely, worth their weight in gold. And the combat camera Marines, the StratCom Marines are just all awesome because they just tell the story of the Marine Corps and, they keep some of us out of trouble. All right. So the Marine Corps boxing team, is that based out of Quantico?
So at the time, which we don't have the Marine boxing team anymore, they got rid of it because of funding, allegedly, but it was in Camp Lejeune, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in Camp Lejeune. So I stayed in Lejeune all 5 years, but that was an interesting time as well because it was during COVID. So I remember we used to spar with masks on. So I got a mask on and I'm now punching at someone and breathing in my own. It was pretty insane. It was pretty insane. And we trained 3 times a day. And, all this stuff's going on around the world. The COVID situation was like, we all know it was a nightmare, but that did not stop us from training and from putting in that work. The expectation was, it was a lot. It was, you're on the track 8, 9 a.m., which in North Carolina in the summer, it's already 95% humidity, thick.
It's like a big wet hug.
Yeah. And coach is like, everyone needs to run under a 21-minute 3-mile. That's my expectation. I don't care if you're tired. I don't care what it is. Like, that's the time you got to make. So there's no such thing as like a casual shakeout run. Like every time we were on that track, it was balls to the wall as hard as you can for time. We weighed in every week. We were expected to come back after that training, after that hard run, like 2 hours later and do a full 2-hour training session, whether it be punching the bags, sparring, pad work with the coach, doing like interval training on the jump ropes. So it's a 2-hour session there. And then 2-3 times a week, we would do strength and conditioning as well. Very heavy weightlifting, not just like light 20-pound dumbbells, but it was like, you know, sometimes you're deadlifting a couple 100 pounds, really build that strength. And it was like that, you know, every day. It didn't matter. Even after a tournament, we didn't take a full week off. It was maybe Monday you take off, Tuesday you're right back. So it was hard work. And a lot of times there was comments made like, "Oh, that's such a skate job," or "Wow, I would freaking love to have done that." And I'm like, "No, you probably would not have survived." Honestly, like, you say it's exciting, great. Yes, the idea of it is, but the amount of work that goes into being a full-time athlete, training like a professional athlete, to this day, I've never trained that hard in terms of boxing. As a pro boxer, I still, right now, don't train as hard as I did. As an amateur, you, in a way, have to be in even better shape because you fight multiple days in a row in these tournaments sometimes. So one time I fought in a tournament, the National Golden Gloves, I fought 4 days in a row. And the pace of the fight as an amateur, you got 3 rounds, 3-minute rounds. You don't have time to feel out your opponent. It's go, 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 go. It's intense, it's high pace, volume, throw as many punches as you can without getting hit. Score as many punches as you can and don't get hit, right? Professional boxing, yes, you got to be in incredible shape, incredible conditioning, but you can slow it down. You can go 2-3 rounds where you only throw, you know, every 10 seconds, slow combinations, throwing out your jab, trying to catch the rhythm of somebody. In amateurs, it's not like that. So the training is actually a bit different from amateur to pro. Depending on what level you're at, like I said, it can be sometimes harder. The frequency of the fights and the tournaments and how many days in a row you're fighting, it's intense. I had a blast though. I loved it. It was a great time. I met some incredible people, but it was really difficult, you know, and it was not chill. It was not a party. And I got to say that just because, I'm being real. It was very, very challenging, but it was a great challenge. And it helped build my foundation to eventually win the Olympic trials and to go on and become the professional boxer I am today. So I have to thank the Marine Corps boxing team.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Thank
So
you.
you talked about tournaments, right? Who
Yeah.
are in these tournaments? So you're on the Marine Corps boxing team. Who are in these
Right.
tournaments?
So I had to take a step back before I say that because you have the USA boxing tournaments, which are separate from the collegiate boxing tournaments, which they're separate divisions. So when I was at the Naval Academy and I was boxing there, that was all college students, all novice level. Pretty much everyone had under 10 fights, right? So when I was doing that, it was cool and great, but that was all very low level considering compared to what the actual USA boxing national championships and tournaments were. Now, the Marine boxing team, it wasn't a novice level team. We were actually training to fight at the actual USA nationals and beyond that. So we went against everybody. We went against pretty much anyone in the US that was trying to participate in these regional tournaments, in these local tournaments, and climb the ladder up to the nationals. So yeah, we were fighting people from all over the country when we were training. So it was awesome. And the cool thing is that everything was funded and we actually got paid to be amateur boxers. So our job was literally go fight at the nationals and go win a medal or go win the whole thing and represent the Marine Corps. And I did my best and I won a lot of nationals, multiple, including the trials. And I don't know, I've never really been like the poster child, and that's okay. And I'm not going to ask for that or be like, pick me. But just on a personal note, I've always thought it was interesting that we talk about first to fight and like being a warrior. And I feel like I'm the epitome of that. But I feel like maybe it might be my social media presence or maybe sometimes the things I say get in the way of being fully embraced by the Marine Corps. And I know, I don't want to get into politics or make things emotional, but I think it's important to share that just to be honest and to like let you know my personal experience with it. But I think that sometimes when we have that chip on our shoulder, like I said earlier, it can kind of bite us in the butt if we're not careful. So I think that's probably why I'm not necessarily like a commonly known person in the Marine Corps world, I think is just kind of maybe a lack of awareness, or maybe not being careful enough with the more professional way of handling things on social media. But nonetheless, it could be a blessing in disguise, and maybe that is coming in the future. And I hope so. I hope that there's a way that I could at least be a part of the recruiting efforts. I think there is a struggle with recruiting right now in the military. I don't know if people know that, but it's across the board. And I feel that we should have people share their experiences and show the world, like, you can be you can be authentic and chase your dreams while being in the military. And you showed that. And I'm trying to show that right now as a pro boxer reservist, that I'm chasing my dreams. I'm doing what I've wanted to do since I was a kid, but I'm still in the Marine Corps, still representing, and it's possible, and you can do it too. And it can actually help you get to where you're going, being a Marine. It's not something that necessarily is going to take away. It can actually help you if you do it right. So that's kind of the message that I try to give. I try to represent that type of versatile person as a Marine. So
Yeah.
lot
Well,
to unfold there.
yeah, I mean, I think you're in a great spot to do that. You know, being out there in SoCal and working with the recruiters out there, and just being out and telling the Marine Corps story, and and leading from the front, getting up on the pull-up bar and showing them what people can do, and I think that's awesome. What was the transition like? You're coming up on the end of your contract, so to speak. What was your contract coming out of the Naval Academy? Was it 8 years?
It's 5 years, but in order to get the full GI Bill, you have to do 8 active duties. I did a year of prep school, Naval Academy prep school, so that counted as an extra year. So I technically did 6, which would give me like the majority of the GI Bill, but the Naval Academy requires 5. The transition was pretty challenging. I thought it'd be a lot easier. I thought I was gonna go out and be like, bye, see you later. But it was hard, and I think one of the reasons why I went the reserve route was because I still felt like I wanted to be a Marine, just not 100% of the time. But the first place I moved was Miami, actually. When I got out in 2022, I did some traveling, which was awesome. I went to Europe and did some exploring, Amsterdam, Paris, Italy, Rome, all that stuff. And I tried to just get away from the U.S. a little bit and go see what it's like. Is that the buy drink?
It is.
That's the drink that I had where I drink the dip spit. Yeah, there was that one too, the blueberry. Shame. But anyway,
I didn't mean to.
I just
Didn't
gave,
mean to bring up the
yeah,
bad memories.
thanks a lot. No, I'm just kidding. But by the end of 2022 is when I officially went into the SMCR and was with the 4th Battalion AAV HNS company. And I was with them for a little bit. It was in Tampa. I was living in Miami, so it was like, 3-hour drive every month. And then after about a year, I had started making plans to move to New York. So I actually switched my unit from CR AAV unit to recruiting station New York. So I was there for a little bit. And then as I got closer to the summer of 2024, I felt like maybe New York wasn't the best place for me to go. So I was like, I feel like I want to be in the sun. I don't like the cold. I'm not good at cold weather.
Cold and concrete.
Right. And also, I grew up in Washington State. So I was like, I've been living on the East Coast now, technically from Atlanta, lived there for 7 years, but I grew up in Washington State. That's where my mom and brothers are. And then did college and active duty on the East Coast. I felt like, it's time to go back to the West Coast. So switched to the West Coast, and that's when I did the transfer from RS New York to RS LA. And in May of 2024 is, when I got out here to the LA area and started working with them. And it's been really fun. And it's been really humbling to actually learn about the world of recruiting. And it's rough. You gotta be like really, really, really focused for like 3 years. And I'm not saying that it's gonna be fun. You gotta find a way to enjoy some of it. And I think that when we do those random events like Comic-Con or the Vans Warped Tour, those are the moments where you got to actually make it fun, or it just gets rough. And I'm not authorized to do like the legitimate recruiting where like I call candidates, and I've talked to candidates or people that have been interested in the Marine Corps via Instagram, people that have reached out with questions because they've seen the Marine walkout for the boxing fights. And with that, I'll give them information. And if they're in the local area, absolutely we'll like funnel them over to the chain of command and to the actual recruiters, but I don't actually have the official recruiting title. So I have never experienced working from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. on recruiting people. I have as a AAV officer. Obviously you go out to the field, you're nonstop working, but it's different. It's different than when you're like told you got to get this many people shipped off to boot camp by this time, figure it out, go do it. Like that is so hard to go out into the world and to get people to sign up to be a Marine. It sounds not so bad, but it's hard. It's really hard, especially now, because with social media and just the amount of different ways to make money and the ways to succeed in this world, a lot of younger people are like, I don't need to go do that. I have other options. So you really have to like explain the camaraderie aspect and the team aspect. And that's why for us, we usually talk to athletes or people that have been on teams, because not everybody wants to work behind a desk. Not everybody wants to work and make a bunch of money, but do something that requires them to be in an office somewhere. And some people really love being surrounded by other motivated individuals who want to be on a team. And so those are the type of people that we have to go find and share the information with them. And it's not about saying, do it. Like, you should do it. You should really do it. It's more like, here's my experience. Here's what it taught me. Here's my story. And if this resonates with you and you want to learn more, here you go. To me, that's what I've noticed is the best way to recruit, is to be genuine. But when people smell or feel desperation, they run the other direction. I think most of us are able to catch on to when someone is like desperately trying to pull you in to their whatever it is that they're trying to get you to do. So
A hard sell.
hard sell, right? So you just got to be you, and you got to be straightforward. And sometimes I think it is good to be like, I don't know if you're good enough. Takes a special kind of person, because a lot of times it actually does inspire people to be like, you know what, I am good enough. And you know what? I want to prove to myself right now, I want to be a Marine. I want to go do this because I'm afraid of it, and I want to do something where I have to face my fears. So that actually is a genuine way of getting interest as well, is knowing that not everyone's cut out for something, and not everyone is literally able to be in the Marine Corps because they don't have what it takes. So proving someone wrong or proving yourself wrong, most importantly, I think for a 4-year deal in your, late teens, early 20s, and for officer, early 20s, why not? That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. And what you're doing out on social media with the pro boxing and the music stuff here and there, and just the content you're putting out, I think it really is an opportunity for people to look at the Marine Corps in a different way, because I came in and for the longest time was in without any social media and stuff. And, there's a lot of military influencers that are out there. I consider you one of them, to go out there and just put out just a great message, and I can see why people would gravitate to it.
Thank you.
The question I have regarding that is like, the older I get, the more I feel like the grumpy old man and the get off my lawn guy and that kind of thing. But to me, when I think about recruiters out there, doing all the work that they're doing, it seems like society is just getting softer. And it's hard to go and find some of those people that are willing to do things that are hard, that are willing to do things where it involves embracing the suck and going through some shared suffering for the greater good or the greater team. And it just seems like a lot of that is going away. That's just my perspective outside looking in.
No, I think that in a lot of ways that could be true. And if you think about how many hours most young people spend on the phone, and I say young people, but including myself, we're looking at some of these kids. For example, my mother is a teacher, like I said earlier. I talked to some of her students and they said, some of them were saying I spend 10 hours a day on my phone. So if someone who is young is spending 8 to 10 hours on their phone and they're scrolling and they're on Instagram and they're online chronically, that's 8 hours a day that you're spent not doing something real, something real. Something real like playing outside with your friends, being in band, being in choir, being in a sport, being an extracurricular. Like, I think we're starting to see less involvement in like actual activities from young people. I've asked a lot of young people what their hobbies are and they don't have them. I asked them, what team are you on? What do you do after school? And a lot of them don't do anything. They just are on their phone. And I think that could be one of the reasons. There's probably a multitude of different reasons, but there's like this lack of competitiveness and a lack of interest in doing meaningful things that make you grow as a person. And yeah, you might think being on the T-ball team is not a big deal, or, you know, playing volleyball for your high school is not a big deal, but it teaches you things. It teaches you about teamwork. It teaches you that, like, man, sometimes I'm great in practice, but I'm not great when it's time to perform the real thing. Why? It makes you ask yourself, why do I have these deficiencies? Why am I this way? And then it makes you work through them. So you are exposed when you're in sports, when you're in music, you're exposed to your weaknesses and your strengths. And when you're exposed to your weaknesses and strengths as a young person, and then you work on them and you improve, that's empowering. And like, I just don't see it happening as much these days. I don't see young people wanting to discover who they are and figure out where they're deficient, where they need to grow, and what they're good at, and like what they do in life that makes time feel like it doesn't exist. Like, we're losing that. And I think that with social media again and people being on their phones, they're seeing the final product of a lot of things that are either fake, that aren't real, that are fabricated, or of something that took months to make, and they're just seeing the final product. So they don't realize what went into that, you know? And I wish that more influencers and I wish that more people on the internet were straight up about it and were real about it and showed, hey guys, today I'm gonna be honest, this is not my mansion. I rented this out today. These cars are not my cars. I rented these out for my Instagram following. Oh, and that video that you saw where I was pretending to sing live in my kitchen, that's pre-recorded. I don't actually sound like that. So you so-and-so who want to sing but you feel like you're not good enough, you are good enough. I just use autotune, whatever it's called. And I pre-record things to make you think that I'm a better singer and musician than I actually am. People aren't real though. People are fake. People will Photoshop the most random pictures and things. Like, you think you're looking at someone's gym selfie, but you're not. You're looking at a Photoshop version. So now, man, I wanted to go to the gym, but look at that person. They're so jacked and ripped, and I'll never look like that. So now I'm not going to do that. They're going to show you the highlights of their fights. They're not going to show you the moments they got clipped or they got dropped or they got hurt or they got hit with a combination. They're not going to show you all the meat and potatoes in between. They're only going to show you the clips where they look good. Who shows you clips where they're losing or doing bad? Nobody. But in reality, in every fight, you're going to lose exchanges. You're going to lose moments. You have to. If you go into a fight knowing you're going to win, what's the point, right? So it's just, I can rant about this for hours, but I think these young people are just, they're being tricked and they're being misled. And we can't put the blame on them. We have to look at ourselves as the adults in the room, as the adults, adult parents, the adult teachers. What's going on? What are we doing? Because I feel that we are failing these children. We cannot put the blame on the kids because they're kids, you know?
Well, I think what that does say is the people who do decide to sign up in any service truly are the 1%. And they're the ones that they're going to go do the work, and they're going to be our leadership of the future, and they're going to go out and they're going to win our wars.
For sure. For sure.
So can you explain to me, I did some boxing my freshman year at the Citadel, and we pretty much called it beating and bleeding. We had this cool old crusty coach who reminded me of Mick from Rocky, and but how do you become pro? Like, what's the decision point to say, okay, I am now going to pursue being a pro boxer? You leave the amateur
Right.
status and all that kind of stuff, but what's that process?
So of all the professional sports, it is the least impressive, I guess, path to become pro boxer, because You literally, you apply, you get a fighter's ID card in whatever state you're in. You basically prove that you're able-bodied, you do a physical. So the process of becoming a pro fighter is actually very simple. And it's not like the NBA or the NFL, there's no draft, right? The part where it starts becoming competitive is where you as a fighter want to be signed to a promotion and actually be a part of, for example, for MMA, it's the UFC. The UFC is not a sport. The UFC is a promotion / organization that has pretty much, right, it's like a league. But the UFC is realized this recently, is a public company. They're public. In boxing, the top promotions are actually private companies. So it's a little different. And in the UFC, you're a contractor. In the professional boxing world, it's since it's a private company, you're kind of like an employee in a way. And I don't want to get too technical about it, but if you're not signed to a promotion as a boxer, you have to fund everything yourself. You have to build your record with your team, whether you have a manager, you don't have a manager. After you've done your paperwork, you've gotten your medicals done, and you decided that you want to be a professional boxer, you also revoke your right to compete as an amateur. Some countries, most countries except for the US, allow you to have up to 5 professional fights before you can no longer do anything as an amateur. But in the US, we're very strict about that. So if you become a pro, you can't do any amateur fighting. And once you become a pro, you use small gloves. So I fight in 8-ounce gloves, and there's no headgear. And you can fight up, for women, it's up to 10 rounds. For men, it's up to 12 rounds. For women, for some reason, 2-minute rounds. For men, it's 3-minute rounds. And as you're starting your career, you start at 4 rounds. And as you get more experience, you go up to 6, then 8, then 10. Then for championship fights or title eliminators, you fight 12 rounds for the men. For women, it's 10. So as a pro athlete, pro boxer, what would make sense is that you make money to fight. As an amateur, technically, you don't, unless you win a medal at the Olympics or World Championships. They give you a big check. In between, at the tournaments, you're not getting paid. You're an amateur athlete. For a pro, you would think, oh, pro athlete is supposed to get paid to fight. Well, no, not always. And actually, in the beginning of your career, like where I'm at right now, my career, I actually, since I'm not signed to a promoter, and I am free agent in terms of the promotion, I have to pay for my own opponent's purse. So their pay, I have to pay for their flights, I have to pay for their hotels, I have to pay for their coaches' flights, their coaches' hotels. I literally have to pay for everything as an athlete. My last opponent was from Argentina. So her flights were $3,000 round trip for just hers, her and her coach. The promoter that I was working with was like, yeah, you can fight on this card. You're not my fighter because you're not signed to me, but if you pay for all this stuff, you're good to go. I'll give you a slot on this card. You can get a fight, but it's going to cost you $9,000. So what I then have to do as a pro fighter is I have to get sponsorships and I have to sell tickets. So what I do is, you've probably seen it where I'm talking about sponsorships. Anybody interested in sponsoring this fight? You can put your logo on my trunks, on my shorts. I'll give you a shout out on Instagram. That's not just for money that goes in my pocket. That's actually the money that goes towards funding the actual fight.
Right. Now, do you have a website?
I do have a website.
And are you able to put like a Venmo or PayPal or donate here? Do you have the ability to do that?
I do. I need to.
Yeah.
I need to do that. But usually what I do is every fight, I put out a picture of like a diagram of the shorts, and I go, anyone who's interesting, here is my information for sponsorships. There's different packages. There's like, some are more expensive. If you want your logo in a certain part of the trunks or on the bra, for example, some cost more than others. And then what I'll do again is I'll have a certain amount. I'll put out the information. But for this stage of my career, this is how it goes. And eventually, your goal is to eventually get signed to a promoter who basically invests in you as a fighter and is like, okay, we're going to do a 5-fight deal. You're going to fight with my promotion for your next 5 fights. And this is what you're going to get paid per fight. We cover everything. You don't pay for your travel expenses or your coaches. You don't pay for your opponent. You don't have to sell tickets either. We invest this in you in hopes that you eventually make it to a world title. And when you start fighting for a world title, then there's more of an investment, return of investment at that point, because you're associated with our our promotion and you're winning belts. So that makes us look good. And also you bring in a fan base who then buy tickets. So it kind of all circulates, if that makes sense. So the pro boxing game and the pro boxing world is very complicated and can be kind of an oxymoron because you're a pro athlete. And for me, I'm an Olympic trials champion, multiple time national champion. I did not know that I'd be going into this being the one that had to pay this much. I didn't know that. But it's honestly, if you don't have, like I said, if you're not signed to promoter, this is how it goes. And it's not just me. There are thousands of fighters doing the same thing right now. So it's just how the game is. But like I said, I know that in a few fights, going to be set up well, and I'm going to be in a situation where I don't have to pay for my opponent's purse or for their travel. It's at this state of my career, this stage where I do have to do that. But yeah, my goal is to be a world champion, you know, at 140. So.
One of the coolest things I have ever seen in fighting, whether that's UFC, boxing, whatever, and maybe it's given my background, but when I saw this pro fighter come out, do her walk up with a fire team of Marines behind her, I just thought that was the most badass walk up entry that I have ever seen. Tell us about that.
Thank you. Well, all those Marines I work with in recruiting or work in recruiting in like the local area somewhat, like Long Beach, for example. I was close to like 3 of the 4. One of them I didn't know too well, but I had this idea. You know, I'm like, hey, I don't know how many more times I'm going to fight in LA, because as you climb the rankings and stuff, you don't really get to choose where you fight. And a lot of fights are in Vegas. A lot of fights are in New York. There's a lot of fights in Florida too. But I thought to myself, I feel like I need to walk out with some Marines because I don't know how many more opportunities I would have. And I feel like it would be really freaking cool. So I reached out to them and they, without any hesitation, said, heck yeah, like let's do this, you know? And I was thinking of a song that had a good cadence and rhythm, right? And I remembered, I'm like listening and thinking, I also want like, since we're all women walking out, I want like a female singing voice or like song. And I'm like pressing shuffle through some of my music on my phone. Thinking, dang, that is a very militant beat. And it was Lose My Breath by Destiny's Child. And I think it's like a marching band's playing in the song with the trumpets. I don't know if there's trumpets, but at least the drum solo in the beginning and the drum beat, they're like legit snare drums, not on a drum set, but like a drum line. So I'm thinking like that sounds like a military drum line, or it could at least be interpreted as such. So I kept picturing in my mind, okay, good, this is a perfect walking pace song. And then I'm thinking, if we're gonna do this walkout, we gotta be in step, you know? So I'm thinking, I'll call it. And I'm thinking of where in the song I gotta say forward march. If I say forward march too soon, they're gonna step off like at the wrong time. If I say it too late, they're gonna step off too late. So I practiced in my head on the treadmill as I'm cutting weight, like a week out, like over and over and over in my mind, the perfect time to say forward march, how I wanted to say it. And then I realized too, okay, the steps that we're on, we got to step down every step together. And I'm here, but I got to put someone 2 paces behind me. I got to put people 2 paces behind them. We can't just walk down the stairs. We were literally at the fight the day of, and I'm like orchestrating this. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go first. You're gonna take 2 steps. This row's gonna take 2 steps. Then you step down the first step. The row behind you, you guys are gonna do 4 steps. Then you take a step. So it's every 2 steps. So it's like all the stuff I learned in marching band, all the stuff I learned from marching in the Marine Corps, understanding how to step off on beat, counting, because even the drum solo in the beginning, you don't feel like a metronome. It almost sounds like a solo. I had to really keep the time. I had to really focus or we were not gonna be on step. Me being the musician, me being the musical person, I'm like practicing in my head, and then we practiced there a few times and we nailed it. And we're marching in step, and I thought like it would be a unique walkout, also be really fun to walk out with some of the Marines I worked with. And so that was that, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that becomes a thing, right?
Yeah.
You know, and as you know, the beauty of the Marine Corps and the Reserve is between reserves and recruiters is they're everywhere. So whether you fight in Florida or Texas or New
True.
York or LA, touch base with those folks. But that was just so awesome. And if
Thank
you
you.
are a company and you are looking for someone to sponsor, I mean, how can a large company or really any size company not look at that and go, I want to be behind that. I want to make that happen. So we're out
Thank you.
here. We're cheerleading for you.
Thank you.
Keep up all the great work with the fights and with the music. Even though that's probably a little bit more of a stress reliever, or just something you do for fun. For me, I noticed it was always there. It was always there, and it was something that I did while on active duty or while I was out or away from the Marine Corps. Just something I always wanted to do, and now in retirement, I get to do it. So whether that's
100%.
working down in the recording studio that we built here, or introducing super cool people to different audiences, it's just something to hold on to and never let it go. Just
I
kind of
won't
keep it
follow your
there.
lead.
And yeah, right on. Well, thank you for all you
Thank
do
you.
in the Marine Corps and helping find people out there to go, do our nation's bidding and win wars. And also, good luck to you in the ring. If there's anything we can help you with, please let us know. And then if you happen to be near Nashville, would love to have you come to the studio. We'll do a follow-up interview, and then we'll do a live performance, and, we'll start working on that music career for you.
Let's go. Thank you
Right
so
on.
much. And
Absolutely.
talk to you soon. Thank you again for having me.
All right. Take care. Semper Fi. Ra.
Semper Fi.